Hello, Morongo Basin and listeners around the world online at Z107.7 FM.com. This is your Z107.7 Local news for Sunday, March 22nd, 2026. If you're wondering what's going on at the United States Marine Corps proposed expansion of the special use airspace in the Morongo Basin, we have a few updates. Here's a quick refresher. In the fall of this year, the Marine Corps proposed a permanent special use airspace above the 29 Palms Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center and the areas adjacent to it, namely most of the Morongo Basin and the Johnson Valley OHV area. The project website says the expansion would support current and future training activities for 365 days a year. It also says there would be no change to the public's access to the Johnson Valley shared use area, but it also says that because of the permanent nature of the special use airspace, you may have to get the Marines' permission to now use parts of that expanded airspace. The release of the proposal had off-road groups, amateur aviators, and residents concerned that would mean more access for the military while simultaneously shrinking the available airspace. The nonprofit organization Blue Ribbon Coalition released an initial response in late August saying that the restrictions would harm off-roading activities in Johnson Valley like the King of the Hammers. They say that medevac flights and other essential emergency responses could be impacted, thus limiting the off-road event. The Blue Ribbon Coalition describes themselves as a national group that fights to preserve recreation access to America's public lands. There is a public comment period and a timeline given by the Marine Corps, and then a waiting period where info fell dark during the federal government shutdown. The Marine Corps did release 2 fact sheets about the proposal, which also included 2 alternatives to the permanent year-round expansion. In those fact sheets, the Marine Corps say that the recreation activities and events would not be impacted, and drone usage and low-flying aircraft can continue as it does today without permission or authorization required from the Marines. It also states that emergency medevac flights would remain prioritized and protected. The Blue Ribbon Coalition said in a statement released in mid-November that they appreciate the Marines' willingness to share information with the public and that they're approaching the conversation with respect for their role, but they respectfully disagree with some of the items on the fact sheets which don't line up with the draft environmental assessment released by the Marines. Z107.7 contacted Captain Jonathan Huizar, who's the Director of Communication Strategy and Operations for the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. He says that the Combat Center is grateful for the public comments and that they're confident that the final environmental assessment will provide clarity to stakeholders in the area. That final environmental assessment is now available for public review. And on March 20th, the Marines issued the following statement, quote, "The establishment of a permanent SUA over and adjacent to the installation is essential to the Combat Center's mission as weapon systems continue to advance and produce military forces with increased capability for detecting and countering enemy threats from greater distances. Adequate airspace is required to conduct the full scope of training exercises prescribed by Congress." Based on the final analysis, the Marine Corps has issued a finding of no significant impact, or FONSI. The environmental review process is now concluded, and the proposal will now proceed to the FAA to undergo the FAA's formal rulemaking process and final determination. This is a developing story, and stay tuned to Z107.7 to see how this will impact residents of the high desert. Reporting for Z107.7 News, I'm Robert Hayden.